somebody raised a hand. Does that mean that you heard us?
And you should be able to use the chat feature if you have any questions.
Yeah, everyone can. Hello. Okay, great. Yay. People can hear us. Woohoo. All right. Then we know. Thank you. All right, about one more minute, and then we're going to get started. I hope everyone is enjoying the weather. You're all inside, so you can take this call, participate in this video conference, and we're really grateful for that. All right, everybody. I think it's a good time to start. Thank you very much for joining us in our 10th grade transition meeting. Again, like I said, here you are when the weather is beautiful. Maybe some of you are sitting outside and doing this on your phones. If that's you, great. Otherwise, thank you for going in from outside to join us tonight. And we will be kind of cueing each other when to change slides, so please forgive us. All righty. So thank you for joining us. I just want everybody to take a minute to think about a time when not a time, but last year at this time, when you were getting excited for your freshmen to come to DePaul, your incoming freshmen, and now here we are a year later. So exciting. They're 25% of the way through. Woohoo! I mean, it's going to go faster than you think. And so I just really want to tell you that even though you may know a lot of the information in these presentations, the fact that you're here tonight joining us really speaks to your commitment to our partnership. We're sharing the information that we think a parent needs to know for a rising sophomore. And so we're just really trying to be very specific and really intentional about what we're sharing. So if you have questions, there's a chat button at the bottom. We're going to do our best to keep up. Everything is being recorded and will be shared. If we don't know the answer, we'll just say that. But again, we're really grateful that you're here. And out of however many hundreds of parents who are going to be the parents of sophomores next year, here we are with an important group who are interested in learning everything that we have to share. Okay? Okay, so who's on the call tonight? Introductions, me. I'm Anna Pavicevic. I'm Director of Student Services. And we have Megan Zolna, who's the Parent Association rep. We think having a parent perspective is critically important in providing information. Maria Hill, our assistant principal, is here with us tonight, and she'll be able to answer many of our questions. Jackson Ford, Campus Minister Service Coordinator, same, has a very unique perspective about some of the work we do at the school. Will also be here to answer questions. Andrea Janik, School Counselor. For some of you, she may be your student's counselor, so she may be a familiar face. Elise Adolph, English teacher, here to also join us tonight and sharing important information. And then finally, another counselor tonight, Claire Tiemann. And so you may recognize some of our faces. Some of our faces may be new to you, but again, we welcome you warmly and are glad that you can be here with us tonight. Okay, Jackson.
Hello. They have prevailed upon my theology degrees to read the prayer. Thanks for joining us. We start in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Creator God, source of love, font of peace, we gather in your name as parents, guardians, and caregivers of teens. We give ourselves to you in this moment. When we are overwhelmed, give us confidence in the small steps. When we are stressed, help us to recognize joyful moments. When we are filled with worry, give us the reassurance of your presence. And when the day keeps us running, remind us to breathe in the life giving air around us. Infuse us with the breath of the Holy Spirit, knowing that it is in us but not of us. Give us patience and strength for the long days and quick years of childhood, and hold on to our hearts in your loving hands. We ask this in your name, O God. Amen. St. Vincent de Paul, pray for us. St. Louise de Marillac, pray for us. I'll also just take 1 second and say I read a version of that prayer with all of your students over the last 2 days, so we're all on the same page. Under God, I promise.
Thank you, Jackson. Like Anna said, my name is Claire Tiemann. I am one of the counselors here. And to start us off, I will be speaking about the character and personality traits that we oftentimes see with 10th graders. So, the change that I see in students from the beginning of their freshman year to the beginning of their sophomore year is one of my favorite transitions that I have the privilege of witnessing. Um, Aside from the physical growth, I always laugh when my students come into my office at the beginning of the school year and I'm like, oh my gosh, you are a foot taller than you were when I saw you last. So that's really fun to see. But personality wise, they are. DePaul feels a little bit more like it's theirs than it did freshman year. They feel more confident in their place in the building. They are still early on enough in their academic careers here where there's still some newness and excitement to the beginning of the year. So they're ready to learn. They have great energy levels. And they're more independent than they were. They just feel a little bit more self-assured, which is really exciting to witness. On the flip side of that, they're still 15 years old. And so we see that there are still some challenges with maturity and behaviors, which is to be expected. That's totally developmentally appropriate, but it is something that we see. While everyone, adults-wise, in the building works to foster a community where there's not a social hierarchy, so to speak, it is also very developmentally appropriate for teenagers to be aware of themselves and where they think that they sort of sit within the social scene at or within their communities. And so their social identity is something that's very important to them and can sometimes be a challenge as they just continue to grow and mature. Um, I'll speak a little bit more to this, as will the other faculty members on the call. But sophomore year, there is an increase in the academic rigor and the expectations that we have of students. And there is more of a decrease in the amount of hand holding, if you will. So, as students adjust to that increased level of independence, there is sometimes a drop in grades as everyone acclimates. Um, and then I will also be speaking to this in future slides, but just as students continue to hone their skills in terms of their executive functioning, their organization, and their self-advocacy, we can run into some bumps in the road sometimes. This is what counselors are here for, though. I mean, all staff members are here to support with this, but this is especially within our wheelhouse. We are here to help with all of those things. And then lastly, this is something that I would really ask for your partnership with at home, is learning, practicing the skills needed to utilize technology as the tool that it is, and working on making it less of a distraction. So having a discussion with your children about, where are you putting your cell phone while you're doing your homework? Is it right next to you, or are you putting it in the other room as you study? With iPad use too, we have a platform called Jamf where students can, excuse me, teachers can block certain access to certain apps while they are instructing. So if your child has games on their iPad, Jamf will allow teachers to block access to the games. However, there are sometimes teachers will need students to be able to Google something for something that they're working on. And suddenly, instead of Googling what they're supposed to, they are looking at dresses for homecoming or checking the most recent sports score. And sometimes students don't even realize, I mean, we all do this. We don't realize that we've even become distracted. So having some really focused conversations at home around effective and appropriate technology use in school is something that I think is needed and that we would all appreciate, and that will be helpful for your student ultimately. So in terms of becoming an independent learner, I've sort of broken it down into three categories of skill that are most important to develop: organization, communication, and fostering autonomy and independence. So students are going to be needing to sustain focus for longer than they did freshman year, especially for lengthier or more challenging tasks. Their assignments are going to have more components than they may have had in assignments their freshman year. This is a skill that I hope that all students have been working on their freshman year already, but continuing to identify systems that work well in terms of keeping track of materials and homework, knowing where to locate their assignments in Schoology and accessing their notes on Notability, taking notes that are clear and organized and effective. Um, Checking their work for mistakes and then submitting it. Something that a lot of freshmen have struggled with is they do the assignment and then they don't actually hit submit on Schoology. And so they've done all this work and then they don't get credit for it. And so sophomore year, there's less checking up on that. And so students need to be extra diligent about making sure that they've submitted the work that they've spent a lot of time on. In terms of communication, helping your students craft emails to teachers that are more than just, "Hi, I missed class. Tell me what I need to do, please." And more of, "I missed class. My understanding is that I need to do this and this and this. Can you please confirm that that's all that I need to do by the time that I return to class?" So really helping students um, take ownership of the material and the time that they are missing, and following up with their instructors to make sure that they are catching up on everything that they need to catch up on. And then in terms of autonomy and independence, again, staying up on their homework, advocating for themselves, and planning for the future. 10th grade might seem a little bit early to start thinking about college in some ways, but it's really not. There's things that we want students to be focusing on as 10th graders, and we have a dedicated 10th grade college counselor who is here to help start exposing students to different types of schools, so that when they enter their junior year down the road, they already have an idea of, what they like, what they don't like, what they're interested in going into, what they're not interested in going into, so that we can really hone in on that as their time at DePaul progresses. So a couple skills that are helpful for students to build upon, or a couple methods, excuse me, for students to work at to build those skills. The prioritizing quadrant and the Pomodoro method are two ways that I have shared with students and that other counselors have shared with students too. This helps with prioritizing assignments and knowing how to prioritize, and then tips for sustaining focus. So for the prioritizing quadrant, you can put, excuse me, just one moment. You can put assignments in the is it urgent and is it important category. If it fits in there, prioritize it. If it doesn't, put it in the corner. Dre, if you can jump in for me, that would be great.
So yeah, this is a helpful tool for students to use in order to determine what assignments they need to complete first, and then what they can save for a later task. And then we can hit the next slide. The Pomodoro technique is another method to help students stay focused and fresh while they are working on their assignments. So for this technique, they're going to pick a certain task that they need to get completed. They can set a 25-minute timer, and that's the amount of time they're going to spend working on the task. And then once that 25 minutes is up, they're allowed to take a 5-minute brain break. And then every 4 Pomodoros, they take a longer 15 to 30-minute break. So this is a way to split up their homework so it's not feeling as overwhelming while they are working through their assignments.
I'm Elise Adolph, and I'm one of the 10th grade English teachers here at DePaul. And I'm going to discuss with you and kind of give you a window into how academic rigor and student engagement increases in 10th grade. As Claire kind of mentioned, we do, the teachers of the 10th graders expect a little bit more from them. So I'm just going to kind of explain what that might look like and some ways that you can help your student kind of adjust to that, especially in the beginning of their 10th grade year. So the first one, expanding on what Claire said in terms of Schoology and email communication, this is very important in 10th grade because this is how teachers are going to communicate with your student. So I highly suggest that students check their email daily and Schoology daily. As you know, probably from their 9th grade year here, that's where all their assignments live, and a lot of resources, helpful resources for them to use for classes as well. So just kind of encouraging your student, if they're not already in this practice this year, that especially start in the beginning of their 10th grade year, to really get in the habit of every day checking their email and that Schoology page for each of their classes, so that they can stay up with communication with their teacher on absences, upcoming assignments, and then also opportunities for study and office hours. While we do highly encourage students to check their own grades and their own Schoology pages with upcoming assignments on their own, we do kind of recognize that some students struggle with this and with their organization. And so we kind of suggest that, especially again in that first month, because it's a growing kind of adjustment period. I like to say, just as they adjusted in 9th grade, there's an adjustment period for 10th grade, that you also kind of help them and you check their grades. Maybe just start on a weekly basis those first 2 months and then maybe back off. But also kind of checking their grades, having discussions with them about it, glancing at feedback from teachers on their Schoology pages. In order for you to see the full kind of look of this in Schoology, I highly suggest the web browser on Chrome and Safari, and not just the app. And I actually suggest that students do this as well. In a browser, you can see full feedback from teachers and check specific assignment submissions, where the app doesn't always give you this full picture. I also suggest, I know that In talking with students, there's a lot of new grade apps that are great that help calculate their grade and percentages, but that also does not give you the full scope of the teacher feedback that we put into assignments. So again, kind of encouraging students to look at Schoology first instead of maybe those other apps, so that they can make sure that they're getting all of that feedback that we're putting in for assignments. And then on the discussion of feedback, also kind of discussing that feedback with your student, especially maybe they came home and their first summative did not go very well. Kind of talking with them and saying like, hey, did your teacher leave feedback? If not, encouraging them to go talk with their teacher, having that in-person communication. A lot of students, especially that first kind of month again of sophomore year, tend to not want to talk to us, but kind of just giving a gentle nudge of being like, that's what they're there for. I found that this is the best kind of way of students that are struggling to find help is going to talk with their teacher in that first month, building a rapport, getting that in-person feedback that added on to any written feedback that they might be getting on assignments. Also, ensure that you and your students have an understanding of grade and category weights for the class. This does vary by subject and teacher, and is important to understand at the beginning of the year, especially before any upcoming assignments. Upcoming summatives. This is usually addressed in a syllabi or at the back to school night by teachers. And then if you have any questions, teachers are happy to answer those at back to school night. And then also students should follow up with their teacher if they have questions. All right, moving into reading comprehension expectations. So the reading and writing rigor sophomore year really builds up. The classes that your kiddo will take specifically in the humanities, English, US history, sacred scripture are all very reading heavy classes. So they can expect to read about 15 to 20 pages for homework in a textbook or novel. And then they're also going to be expected to take notes on that text. So you're not just reading it and then you're done. You actually have to take notes and kind of process it usually. And then some classes will include 5 to 10 minute videos or lectures that they're also expected to process and take notes on. Because a lot of these texts are maybe a little bit more difficult in level or Lexile or longer, you might find that, and your student might find that this takes them a little longer than in ninth grade. So I suggest that again in that first couple of weeks that maybe they need to take breaks. That Pomodoro method is great for assignments like this. Maybe it took them 20 minutes to do their history or their English homework last year. This year, it's going to take 40. So again, encouraging your student that, hey, you just might need to kind of like ease into it, get back into the practice. And maybe once you're getting used to the new kind of difficulty of the text, it'll get a little easier. With those texts, students should be expected to come prepared to discuss or apply that reading in class. This could look like in a number of classes, small and whole group discussions, in-class quick writes, analysis, and critical thinking activities. So applying that text in many different ways. They could be assigned a text for homework and then come to class and be like, okay, what can you do with it? And then skills that we look for in terms of reading and that we're going to be continuing to build off of from what they learned in ninth grade are summarizing main ideas objectively, interpreting and analyzing figurative or implied meaning, reading closely to notice and analyze the impacts of small details on a larger idea, and analyzing the development of themes and or concepts across the text. So again, many skills established in ninth grade that we're just continuing to add on to in 10th grade. And then finally, we have writing expectations. So writing long form essays is going to be more frequently done in 10th grade. And that's not just in English. Again, that US history class, especially, and then also sacred scripture, you can expect your students to have to complete long form essays in English. They're probably going to have to complete a summative essay every unit. So just kind of know that that will be expected of them. They also are expected to synthesize several sources or ideas to create a unique perspective. This is done a lot in their history classes. We also really encourage them and have a focus in sophomore year of making independent choices as a writer and really developing their writer voice. Because they've learned the foundations in ninth grade, we're kind of encouraging to branch out of typical writing formation and begin to kind of get more sophisticated with their writing and take writing risks, and get them more confident in their writing, getting them out of any kind of like maybe formula writing that they might have fallen into. We also continue with making sure that they use proper grammar, spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. And then through instruction and lessons, students are taught how to notice patterns in their own reading and go through the writing process and revise their own writing. Again, this is encouraged in classes through a lot of different activities, but also highly encouraged to be done at home in a way that you can help facilitate this. I highly encourage parents to maybe have their student read their writing out loud to them. A lot of times things are caught that way. You also doing open-ended questioning with your student. If they come to you and they're like, oh, I need help with my writing, have them read it out loud to you and then start questioning their logic. Hey, does this make sense to you? Does this word, what do you think about this word? And you'll find that they catch a lot of it on their own. That's a lot of what we're doing in class with them, is trying to see of can they kind of catch and figure out their own logic that way. Yeah, and that's all I have. We can move on.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. I am Megan. I am on the Parent Association, and so if you have any questions or if you'd like to send me a message afterwards, my contact information is on the on the website of the Parent Association. So I have a rising junior and an incoming freshman, and so first of all, I would like to congratulate all of you parents on making it through the end of freshman year. Freshman year is such a time of transition, both academically and socially. So it's absolutely a big accomplishment for you parents to make it and help them navigate through this first year. So this slide here has a few of my thoughts and strategies that you might continue to encounter as you transition now into the next year. And of course, this is not exhaustive. This is just sort of some of my own perspectives as a parent, as well as my background being a law school professor and working with students, and maybe some strategies that might be helpful to you. So if you have any questions, please jump on some comments or feel free to email me later. So my first point here is this whole challenge to balance independence with support, right? As parents, we want to start to encourage our students' independence and for them to advocate on behalf of themselves while also still being parents, right? And so this is a tricky balance. And I know that there's a tremendous amount of pressure that we feel like we only have 4 years to get this right, to get them to be independent, but we also still want them to feel loved and that we're here to help them navigate. So, for example here, so we want to keep ensuring them that as classes, the intensity increases that you've heard about and assignments become longer and maybe more challenging, that they can do this, that their teachers do want them to succeed, and you are here to help them succeed as well. Teachers at DePaul as corrections or meeting times. I've seen our role is to encourage our students to take advantage of those chances, to use those teachers' help. If your student's like, oh, that quiz was just too hard, or my teacher was really difficult this year, help them, know that they're loved and supported, and help them just map out strategies. For example, if you notice a grade when you're checking their Schoology that seems to have slipped ask them, how can you improve this goal? Does your teacher offer corrections for this type of assignment or quiz? So discuss with them, what's your strategy here? I'm your parent and I can help you map it out, but you need to do the work for yourself. And so, encourage them to reach out to their teacher, to email them and ask them. And so you can model what an email might look like to a teacher, but please do not write it for the student. Let them write it, but talk to them. What's your strategy here? What are you going to ask your teacher? Are you going to suggest maybe you can go in during Fresh to meet with that teacher if they're available and work on that topic or do corrections? Or are you going to maybe suggest during the study hall? If you have study hall, that's another great time to work with your teacher on any areas of concern. So definitely, encourage your students to use that Fresh and the DCP resources as well in the Learning Hub. And not just to send them in there, but to take a minute to also, before your student goes to meet with someone, to sort of help them. What are you going to ask? Because if you go to the Resource Hub, it might not be your actual teacher working with you. So what are you going to ask them? Identify for your teacher or someone in the resource department where you're struggling, where you need help, so that you can get a lot out of your time with those teachers that are there to help you. So basically, helping your student navigate, but also, mapping it out for them, but then letting them go ahead and do that work. Okay, so moving on to my next point, building those management strategies. So as you check in with your students regularly, and especially coming into finals, I have here what I consider the what, when, and how you're going to plan to study. Okay, so you can use those planning charts for studying, the Pomodoro techniques that were just mentioned, but check in with your student. Okay, what are your big assignments and quizzes coming up? Or what are the finals that you really need to focus on? And when are you going to study, okay? Or if you have a team practice or a extracurricular meeting or a workout plan this tonight, when is the best time for you to study? Can you move things around and prioritize? We're helping them strategize and manage their time, right? And in the next year, time management becomes crucial as, courses become more challenging, and also your schedule and your students' schedule as they have other non-academic sports, activities, clubs take over. Okay, and then finally the how. So, working with my own students, they had a lot of great resources. Some of their professors help, some of their teachers help them to do study guides. So then, staring at a study guide might not be beneficial. Are you going to then do some outlining or some old-fashioned flashcards? I keep a stack of index cards that my kids can grab and make their own handwritten flashcards. It gets them off their devices, and I know that they're actually studying. That's a little bit of a challenge because then they can discard those flashcards that they've made as they master them. So anything that, find the best way that your student learns, whether it's outlining, flashcards, study guides, or a combination of any of those. Okay, so, and then finally, lastly, my point is try your best as a parent, right? And no one said that this is easy, right? But do your best to encourage them to have a dedicated, quiet study area and have some healthy snacks on hand to keep them healthy. Make sure they're getting some vitamin C as it's crunch time and that they're not just eating a bunch of junk and getting sick. And have those supplies, they're last minute, I need a pencil, where's my calculator, maybe just check in with them. Do you have everything set for your final tomorrow? Is your bag packed? Do you have your calculator? Do you have your pencils? Are they sharpened? Panicking in the morning doesn't help anyone, right? So, and then my last point is just encouraging those study habits, routines, using your Pomodoro technique if that's helpful, or just whatever timers they want to set that they're going to have their snack, take a study, take a break, study some more, however your student best learns. I've found that there's no, one way, but any of these techniques I found useful. And if you have any of your own to share, definitely, jump in with that. But if you have any other questions or you just need another parent to reach out to, again, my email is on the Parent Association website. And let me know if you have any questions.
Okay. Hello. My name is Jackson Ford. I'm in the Mission and Ministry Department at DePaul Prep. I'm here to just kind of overview a bit of what the expectations are on our end of things. This first slide, it covers some information that most of you already know, but and that I've reviewed with them over the last couple days as freshman spring retreats just happened, is that there's a 10-hour service requirement. This service requirement is not due until the students are returning to school at the end of summer. Um, so I have told that to your students, so they should all that should all be information that's on their mind. And if they have any questions or are looking for opportunities or ways to get those service hours done, please have them send me an email. I'm more than happy to, yeah, to meet with them to talk about what our best, some of our best options are. Um, really, 10 hours, you'd be surprised, goes by pretty quick. That's really just maybe 2 or 3 outings of doing service on a weekend or helping out at a park, right? So, not a whole lot, but I also want to work hard at not trying to make these things feel too much like homework, but something that we do together as a community to give back. Yep, and then sophomore year, they don't have any new requirements. Um, a few sophomore students will join an honor society. That's language. I think only language honor societies are the ones that sophomores are eligible to get into, depending on where they started when coming to Paul Prep. And in those honor societies, there are service hour requirements, but there's not a new requirement that takes place at all sophomore year. They will participate in service events with their sports teams or clubs. Some of the clubs will have fundraisers. All of those things are hours that they can log, and I call that logging hours toward their service cord. So after you've gotten your first 10 done, anything after that 10 that you log under the class of 2020, this is class of 2028. Am I right? Yeah. So this class is gonna be they log it under class of 2028 in Mobile Serve, which is our app for keeping track of service hours, and then that just goes towards the possible service cord that they would get awarded at graduation if they meet those requirements. So I think maybe on the next slide that'll give us. Yep. So August 19th, that'll be our official date. Now these were things that were kind of set up before as like proposed check-in dates. I adjusted the date to the end of summer. So these dates, are just kind of, a goal or an ideal. There's nothing set in stone about it. They don't get in There's no punishment if they didn't get that amount of hours done by that time. So, yep, they all have until the end of summer. They all seemed pretty optimistic that they would be able to get that done whenever I asked them. But again, if there's any questions about that, you can just send them my way. And then on the next slide, yes, this covers a bit of our service cord information. So I say service cord is a light blue cord that they can wear at graduation. We're awarding this to 54 seniors on Thursday. So it is a bit of a challenge, but for the class of 2028, they need to have, if they want the service cord, this is not a requirement at all. If they want it, they will need to have 50 nonprofit service hours recorded in mobile serve alongside 20 on campus, 25, excuse me, 25 on campus service hours for a total of 75. Now, it's actually remarkably easy for them to keep track of because there are goal bars in mobile serve that track their progress. So if there is any questions for that, I'm always happy to have students come to my office, or I can show them exactly how to navigate mobile serve. Our counselors get questions about this all the time. They also know they can send their students down to me. So I really am the hub of all information when it comes to everything service related. And it is my joy to be that. So if you guys ever have questions about it, feel free to reach out to me. in that sense as well. And then I think our main final, I'll note this real quick too. So there's, DePaul has like an informational ecosystem that is like comprised of Schoology and emails mostly. We have our newsletter, of course. And then we use this for service, we use MobileServe. So I do my best to navigate this informational ecosystem so that students can basically see these opportunities that we have available almost everywhere. It kind of, if I was a student, it would feel a little annoying. It's really, truly out of the belief that they're overwhelmed with things on a daily basis. So there's sometimes I'm posting these opportunities and they're not looking at Schoology all the time. It's okay. Like they get email notifications about stuff that comes up on MobileServe. I'm just trying to get it in as many places for them to see as possible. And they do not have to feel any obligation to do everything, but I just want to make sure that they know it's there. And I do my best to be a presence in school, out and around talking to students. And so that if they ever have any questions or they're looking for stuff, they know where to find me and they know where my office is. Great. And then our last piece of information is our sophomore retreat. This is just a single day retreat in January. Students will miss other classes for a single day, but and next year our retreat costs are built into our tuition billing. So there's not any additional cost. And this is just for the entirety of their time here at DePaul. And we spend half of the day on campus doing some work around identity and value systems. A lot of this stuff dovetails quite nicely into other things that they do in advisory or with their counselors. And it's really just, there's another level of maturity that they're all experiencing as they move from freshmen into sophomores. And then this is just a step in our sort of retreat scaffold of other things that we encourage them to think about as they continue to mature as juniors and seniors. But this is about identity and cultural values. And then we go to the church where they get to explore a bit of their Vincentian heritage. Father Chris, who is on our board of directors at DePaul College Prep, he's the real Vincentian in the building. I am Vincentian by spirit, so I do my best to communicate the values that we hope to instill in your students. But there's nothing like getting in the church and really experiencing it firsthand. Father Chris makes himself available for all kinds of questions during that time. He's also a guide, kind of talking about the stained glass windows and the altar and the history of St. Vincent de Paul Parish in Lincoln Park specifically. And so our goal during that time is to really help them feel included in this like centuries long family that we get to be a part of at DePaul College Prep, and to help them know that they have access to something that is there for them. And I've been on the retreat now. This past year was my second time going on that round of retreats, and it's truly a blast. I think everybody enjoys just kind of getting out of the building on a winter day and checking out something else. But then they also just love peppering their questions at Father Chris, who's truly a joy, and I hope that you all get the chance to meet him at some point. But we love having him around, and he's a font of all things Vincentian knowledge. So I believe that's all I got for you.
Okay, back to me. Of course, as luck would have it, my internet is kicking me out every couple minutes, so I'm on my phone. So I hope that this goes okay. All right. So we started this evening with a prayer where we prayed for patience and strength. And as parents of teenagers, patience and strength are really virtues that we need to keep very close to us. And we talked about the developmentally appropriate challenges that students would have, and we've outlined several things that kids need to do, that parents need to do. But now, as Director of Student Services, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do to support students. We work as in our Student Services Department, we have got a team of about 23 people made of counselors, school counselors, college counselors, interventionists, learning specialists, and a social worker, and me. And so we really think that we have a deep understanding about the fact that at 15 years old, kids are not cooked. And if you think back to your own life when you were 15 years old and the kinds of things that you did, kids make mistakes, and sometimes they do them intentionally, and sometimes they do them without even realizing it. But the point is that we are here to help develop these academic, behavioral, and social emotional goals. And so, we've talked about a lot of these things, but we do much through counseling, through Fresh Foundations, to develop a lot of these skills. Time management, punctuality, we've talked about those things, but in our classes, we actually set expectations for, okay, we're going to work on this for 10 minutes. And we really hold kids accountable for coming to school on time, for attendance. And these are important skills that we're working with our students at all times throughout all 4 years. Self-advocacy and independence. As kids become more confident in the building, they really start to want to explore a little bit more, right? They're not hiding in groups as much. They make new friends, and it's really important for them to have opportunities for self-advocacy. And we talked about some of the things we do. We help them write letters. We teach them how to think about what independence looks like in a positive and productive way. We teach them how to ask for help, how to reflect, and how to be self-aware, because sometimes at this age, students are not always emotionally regulated. They're hormonally affected. And so we also teach them strategies and skills for managing when they feel somehow stressed or nervous or upset. And we teach them everything from breathing to, prayerful meditation to journaling. And it depends on the specific student, what it is that we're working on them with. We work with them really at this point to predict and understand consequences. Are you aware that what you did could lead to some consequence that maybe you don't appreciate, or that you're really you weren't expecting? How can you in the future make a different decision? How can you know what we expect of you and how to fulfill those expectations, and frankly, what you should expect of yourself and how to fulfill expectations for yourself? And at this age, we're really honing the core values of respect, not only for their teachers and their parents and their peers, but for themselves as well. How to be excellent and how to make healthy choices. And we have many, many ways that we address all of those. Okay, so what are some of the many supports that we have to offer? We really, I've worked in high schools for 40 years, and I will say that DePaul Prep has got one of the most comprehensive menus of support for students, both academic and social, emotional, or behavioral, of any school that I've ever worked in. Our teachers are very connected. They work really hard to make deep relationships with students and to be available, not only to help them with academics, but to help them grow and develop into human beings. Counselors, as I said, we have school and college counselors, and they work hand in hand. And although your student may not have a dedicated college counselor until they become a junior, rest assured that the work we do to develop both academic and post-secondary supports happens from the minute they walk through our door. And sophomore year, we have a lot of fun and exciting things that happen through the parent coffees and a career day. These are new and innovative ideas that are really pushing kids toward more academic goals and success. We have a team of learning specialists that work with students who have IEPs, 504s, and private evaluations. And next year, Fresh, I think you've already heard, is going to be called Fresh Foundations. And I'm not going to get into that too much right now. You're going to hear more about that. And for a specific targeted group of students as a tier 3 support, we have structured study hall. Some students who have IEPs and 504s or private evaluation are scheduled in this course where they have a smaller group of students, student to teacher ratio, and where we're able to support them freshman and sophomore year through some academic and other behavioral challenges or potential supports that they need. Resource Hub, thanks Mom Megan. She already talked about that and what an important resource that is. We have academic support, and that's something that we are constantly monitoring and tracking student grades. And so academic support is a structure that we have in place when students are maybe not demonstrating the levels of success that we think that they should. And so next year it's going to look a little different. So I'm not going to get too much in the weeds or in the details of what that is. But basically, again, that's a push into some specific supports that kids need in order to make sure that they stay on top of their grades. Sometimes parents get busy, they don't notice that a grade is slipped. And I just want to assure you that grades are grades at a point in time, and that there will be a moment maybe where a student doesn't perform as well as hoped or expected on an assessment and a grade drops. Well, guess what? We're watching and we're making sure that with our student success team, made of counselors, administrators, social worker, EDGE personnel, that we are constantly watching, learning specialists constantly watching and making sure that the students have everything they need so that they get the support they need at the time they need it. Social, emotional, and behavioral supports. Our counselors are incredibly well versed in different strategies and techniques, as I said earlier, to help students either self-regulate or with time management or with the various emotional, just normal, age appropriate things that students go through when they're in high school. Peer relationships and organizational skills, same, will reinforce all of those skills and Fresh Foundations. And earlier I talked a little bit about anticipating, predicting, and being open to consequences. We have deans who help students with consequences when necessary, but there's a lot of restorative practices that deans do to get students to reflect and to think about the steps that they've taken, the choices that they've made, and how to make better choices in the future. We have a DEI coordinator, and we think about diversity in our school in a variety of ways: equity, inclusion, not only with students based on race and religion, but on the way that they learn. Co-curriculars, so many, scores of them after school so that students can find their passion. And with athletics combined, opportunities for leadership to demonstrate all of their gifts and talents that maybe we don't always get to see in the classroom in a different environment. And then we have a social worker that we can make available to students when they need that little bit of extra support, that more targeted, individualized support. Accommodations and learning support in 10th grade. So students, many of our students, and today we're anticipating for next year, about 25% of our students have some kind of an accommodation or a learning plan based on, again, having a 504, an IEP, or a private evaluation. And so we ensure that those students who have that documentation have a student accommodations plan that helps them, or that guarantees that they're going to receive accommodations that are targeted to their needs. We share that with students, we share it with parents, we share it with teachers, and each of those students has either a learning specialist case manager or a counselor case manager, depending on what their particular accommodations are and what their diagnosis is, to make sure that they're getting the best management of their program at school. Some of your students may have a structured study hall already in 9th grade. By 10th grade, we start weaning kids out of that. Some students will still have a structured study hall, but we're really working toward full independence. That doesn't mean that they don't get their supports through junior and senior year. They do. A student accommodations plan does exist. But by junior and senior year, we're encouraging students, or we're developing students to be able to advocate for their needs when they get to that point in their high school experience. And so some students may be ready to go into an independent study hall. And we really try to make those decisions so that they can get their practice for how they will exercise independence junior year. And we do schedule that at the same time as a structured study hall, so that students who need to sort of move back and forth from one space to another still have access to a little bit of a more supportive environment when needed. Documentation for students should be up to date within the past 3 years. You will hear from us when it's time for your student to update their documentation. Sometimes we get documentation that is 5 and 6 years old. And if you think about the difference between a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old, that documentation and that opportunity for us to really understand where a student is both academically and emotionally, behaviorally, is really helpful for us in staying on top of and ahead of all of the things that they need. However, by having these documents up to date, then we can make sure that standardized testing accommodations are always available. Sometimes people lag in getting those to us, and then when it's time to take a PSAT or an SAT, there is a lot of anxiety around, oh no, will I get the accommodations? And we're scrambling because the process to get those accommodations approved at the College Board level, and for AP as well, is a little bit rigorous. And so we need some lead time to do that. So as you're thinking about your student matriculating to sophomore year, if you know that it's time to update this documentation, we encourage you to do that. We are strictly now a College Board school, meaning that we do the SAT suite of assessments along with advanced placement and obviously IB if your student is going to ultimately be in the IB diploma program, but we're no longer offering the ACT. And so that's just a little bit of information for you to know as you go into sophomore year and start thinking about what is going to be available to your student in the upcoming years.
Okay, so now I'm going to jump into how our counseling department supports students. So every year, counselors have at least 2 meetings with students, every student on their caseload. We do a general check-in at the beginning of the year just to see how their school year has started, to see if they require any additional support. And then in the second semester, we work with all of our students on academic planning for the following year. As counselors, we help support students in 3 main areas, so social, emotional, academic, and college and career. Though we only have those 2 required meetings, students are always more than welcome to schedule a meeting with their counselor if they need support in any of these areas. All students will receive their official college counselor at DePaul during junior year. However, I want to emphasize that school counselors are able to support students with any questions they have in their post-secondary planning when they come up. So please encourage your student to talk to their counselors about future career or college goals that they might have. Counselors also act as a resource to families. So should you have any questions throughout the year, or if you're looking for any referrals outside of school for academic tutoring or any mental health resources, please feel free to connect with your school counselor, with your child's school counselor on any questions or concerns you may have. So sophomore year, we start a lot of college readiness programs that sophomores will now be able to participate in. This year, we launched our Coffee and Conversations program, which is led by our post-secondary advisor, Nicole Kucera, and those have been awesome opportunities for parents to start learning about the college application process and getting ready for that step senior year. We also have a college fair every year in the spring, and sophomores are invited to attend that event. I was so impressed with how many sophomores attended this year. It's a great opportunity to start connecting with admissions reps, and for your child to start getting an idea of what schools might be a good fit for them to consider. We also offer some campus visits to students in the area. So this year we visited DePaul University, Loyola, Lake Forest are some of the places we visited. And this is a great opportunity for students to start getting an idea of what they're looking for in a campus and start becoming familiar with different criteria that they are looking for when considering different colleges. We also will continue using Maya Learning. So this is a website that students used during their advisory first semester. We used it for course registration, and I believe we did a career aptitude test on there as well, but this is something they'll continue utilizing throughout their 4 years. Students are able to log into Maya anytime. They just log in with their school email. But the reason I point this out is because it's a great tool to start looking for colleges. They have an awesome college search tool where students are able to put in all of the criteria that they're looking for out of a college. And then the search tool will spit out different options based on the criteria. So if you're looking for a small school with a psychology program in Iowa, you put that criteria in, and then it'll give you results that meet what you're looking for. So I know a lot of our sophomores are curious about what they can start doing to get ready for college. And we want to emphasize that, sophomore year, the #1 job is just being a student. And this is the best way to prepare for college. We want to make sure students are doing their best work that they're capable of in their courses. And that's going to be reflective and viewed on their transcripts during the application process. So in order to, continuing to boost rigor throughout their 4 years of high school, maybe try out an honors class or an AP or IB class, students need to make sure they're getting grades, the grades in order to be eligible for those classes. So we really want to emphasize the importance of focusing on grades and academics during sophomore year. If your student is looking for some other ways to start preparing, starting to visit college campuses is a great idea. Like I mentioned before, just to see what your student likes or dislikes about certain universities. It's a great way to start, feeling out what's going to be a good fit for them. During course selection, students also have the opportunity to sign up for the IB program sophomore year. So that's something that could potentially look good on a college application, trying out an IB or an AP class. But like I said, we want to make sure that students are increasing rigor at a manageable rate. So we want to make sure that they have the grades necessary in order to qualify for those classes, because we want to make sure that they're going to be successful in those classes. Another opportunity students can have to start getting ready for after high school is looking into internships or job shadowing opportunities. Our college counseling team has a whole Google sheet with a lot of different internships and pre-college programs available. So I do recommend checking that out if your student is interested in looking for something over the summer. That's available on our website under the college counseling page. They'll also want to start thinking about what their resume looks like for college. So maybe if they weren't able to get involved freshman year while they were adjusting to high school, maybe we start thinking about some clubs or sports or outside organizations that students can start getting involved in. Those are all things that would go on their college application. I do want to emphasize a job or community service look just as great as joining clubs. So if your student wants to work, that's also something that can go on their college application. And then lastly, junior year is when they will start asking teachers for a letter of recommendation. So that's just something to keep in mind as they're continuing throughout high school, the importance of building those relationships with their teachers. So finally, we have final exams coming up the week of May 27th. We'll have finals on the 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th. So we did want to plug that we're going to be offering our final exam study sessions again. We'll have teachers and counselors available if your student's looking for any assistance in studying or has any questions they want to go over. They'll be able to attend after school to help get those questions answered. So this is a great way for students to start getting prepared for their final exams. We're going to start the study sessions the week before finals, so May 19th, and then those will continue until the Thursday of finals. And then lastly, we also wanted to mention that sophomore year, students are going to have some summer assignments that they'll be responsible for completing. So all students will have a reading assignment for English, and then depending on what they signed up for social studies, they might also have a social studies reading assignment. Teachers are going to be going over these reading assignments in class before the school year ends, and then they will be posting the details on Schoology. So it's important that your student is following all those directions to ensure they get those readings completed prior to the start of next school year. And that is all the time that we have. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or if you're watching the recording of this, please feel free to reach out to your school counselor with any questions that you may have. Thank you all.